So, good evening. My name's Deb Canham, and tonight for Facebook Live, I thought we would have a look at cover and chain. Now, not everybody has cover and chain, but maybe this live will show you what it does, and you can decide whether it's something you need. So, I'm going to check my notes. Now, I've already put the notes in, the written notes, and they're in my group, Deb Canham Surgery Sanity Projects on Facebook under Files. And in addition to that, I put a manual up for those of you that have 8-thread machines, combo machines, baby lock ones, that tell you all about the feet. So let me get started. So what is the advantage of cover and chain? I mean, we have the sergers and they do a tremendous variety of stitches. Cover and chain, not so much. They just do cover and chain. So that doesn't sound very exciting, does it? But I'm going to keep going because it gets more exciting. So cover and chain is really considered to be a hemming stitch, and it's probably primarily what it does do. But there's other things you can do with cover and chain stitch. So let me show you some things, and then I'll show you a close-up of cover and chain. But for me, one of the things that I got most excited about was cover stitch as a decorative stitch, because on the front you have straight lines like it looks like a sewing machine, but on the back you have, if you just use one needle, you have what's called a chain stitch, which is just one line of stitching, and the top's a straight stitch but the underside's a chain. And what that gives you is a really embossed stitch. Let me just grab something. I've got lots of things. So if you look at this pot, can you see the blue stitching on it? That is chain stitch. That really, I always think it's a textured stitch, and anybody that knows me well will know that I use it a lot. My coat is covered in it because it looks like it's couched. It's just a really textured stitch, especially when you start using the heavier threads. And I put those in my chain looper, okay, on the underside. But it's not just decorative. I just was telling you that because that's one of the things I got most excited about. But cover and chain stitch itself is a stitch that when the chain's on the back and you use more than one needle, maybe use 2 or 3 needles, it creates a kind of zigzaggy effect. And what that does is it allows a bit of stretch on that stitch. Now, I always hesitate to say stretch because I don't think it's really stretchy, but it certainly gives. So something like a neckline, it has given it, which is a good thing because it has to go over your head, and it also prevents stitches from popping. So, cover and chain has that ability to give. In addition to that, when you sew using cover and chain, remember you're doing it on a machine that has a really fabulous set of feed dogs, 2 sets of feed dogs. So you can really compensate for stretch. And that is a huge part of the equation, because I always say to myself, what machine, the sewing machine or the cover and chain serger, is going to give me the best result? And if I'm doing something like a knit, then the differential feed is so much better on the sergers and cover and chain stitch machines than it is on well, there isn't one on a sewing machine per se that does the same thing. There's only one set of feed dogs on a sewing machine. So the advantage of cover and chain is that it gives you a really professional, durable finish. And my big bag, my zipper is one of those big heavy sports zippers, and I put the zipper in using triple cover stitch, and I did it on this bag too. This bag was totally made using cover and chain, apart from when I sewed it up inside. But here's some examples on here, okay? So let's have a look at some of those things. So I have my straight stitch here, and in fact, the piecing for these triangles was done using chain stitch. And chain stitch is a great way to go when you're piecing together. You've got those fabulous feed dogs, so if you're working on the bias, it's less likely to stretch, and it's also much easier to sew a straight line on the cover and chain or the serger than it is on a sewing machine. It's just more control, I think. So what else have I got on there? I also, one of the things I really like about triple cover stitch, and it's got its limits, but what I really like about it, it does the nicest gather. Now it'll only gather lightweight fabrics, but it does such a pretty gather. It's such a nice even pleat. But the downside is you can't pull up the threads and make it tighter. But if you're making something like a bed skirt or something like that, it's actually easier if your gathers don't move, if they are locked into the fabric. So let me show you some of that. Well, certainly this orange strip is done using that. That's puffing. I gathered both sides of a strip of fabric and I got puffing. But it's easier to see on this skirt, and I'm sure you've seen this before, but can you see the turquoise strip? That is puffing, and it was done with triple cover stitch, and I raised my differential feed to 2, and I got this nice even gather. And you can see the pink stitching. The pink stitching is actually just as a result of putting decorative thread in my chain looper, so I got a nice band of color around it too. But as I said, I love to gather on it. It's even, it holds it together, so you don't have to keep pulling up the gathers. But remember, you can't pull it up to make it smaller. Other things I have done, I have to have a look at my list now, is I mentioned puffing, I mentioned gathering. Attaching heavy cotton lace is easily done with cover stitch and swimwear. A lot of swimwear is made using cover and chain stitch for sewing on elastic and things. And I actually did the shearing on the top of this with a chain stitch. So, it's not just for hemming. There's a number of things you can do. Whatever you sew, you're going to get a very durable, strong seam if you're using triple cover. So, as I said, great for bags, just a really strong seam. So let me go on and, oh, let me show you a zipper I put into. Oh, okay. And here's a zipper I put in using triple cover. And again, it's easier to do that with triple cover than the serger because it's one of those zippers with a bottom, and I had to take that into account. Not so easy using the serger to do that. And Richard says you have some questions. I forgot to stop. Okay, so let me talk about that. Somebody said, is it only found on 8-thread sergers? No, I mean yes and no. 8-thread sergers have cover and chain stitch, but equally, many people like to buy a separate cover machine. Okay, a cover and chain stitch machine. You can go out and just buy a cover and chain stitch machine. And some people like that. For me, I like 4 and 5 thread safety, so I do like the 8-thread machines. Sometimes you can still get that, but you would need to check. But yes, cover and chain and a serger is an 8-thread machine. If you don't have that, then you need a cover and chain machine and a serger. Okay, so does that answer that question? He's not sure. What's the difference between gathering and puffing? Gathering is just gathering. When you gather both sides and you make a panel of gathers, it's called puffing. And it used to be very popular because it was a good way to make your clothing bigger and smaller. So it was used very much in the old days. Sorry, Richard says there's lots of stuff coming in. Okay, so if I haven't answered your question, I might yet. I've still got more to say. So we just have cover and chain stitch, and we can gather with it and all those kinds of things. We can do decorative stitches with it. And as I said, it's great for hemming knits because you've got that differential feed, great for hemming wovens because on the front you'll get your stitches, and on the back it will cover the raw edge. So, I mean, it is a great hemming stitch. But I think what makes the cover and chain way more exciting than I've probably made it sound so far is the number of attachments that come with it. It has a huge number of attachments, and every machine's different. You know, there's different attachments for different machines, but I'm going to cover the ones that we have with the 8-thread machines for Baby Lock, because that's what I'm going to cover tonight. So I'm not going to go through each one, because each one in its own way justifies a whole life to itself, because there's so many things you can do with them. But I just wanted to give you an idea of the attachments that come with them. Okay, a lot of the serger feet can be used with cover and chain. For instance, the ruffler foot, the cording foot, you know, those feet can still be used with cover and chain. And then you have things like the belt loop binder. And I searched everywhere for something where I'd use the belt loop binder, which I have used 100 times, but I can't find anything in my present stock. So the belt loop binder makes belt loops, but you know, you don't just have to use them for belt loops. You can use them for straps for handles. And those of you that know my signature handles, where we make the cording and we braid the straps together, you could equally do that with the narrow belt binder. The belt binders come in different sizes, and the bigger one is good for straps, and you can weave them together as well. So there's a number of different things you can do with the belt binder, and you can put tape and things in with the belt binder to make the straps heavier, and that actually came up in a post the other day on my group. So that's the belt loop binder. Then we have the let's deal with the downturn fella next. The downturn fella is, you just grab one. The downturn fella is a hemmer. You know, no, I shouldn't have said that. The downturn fella is a fella. Okay, so what you're going to do is, this is the fella, and you're going to attach it to your machine, and what it allows you to do is to feed in a piece of fabric, and they come in different sizes. This must be the 5/8, I think. And what you do is you fold your fabric round, and it fills the whole gap in the back, and it allows you to make a hem without having to press and iron your top. And some people use them a lot, and I always say that they work best with crisp fabrics, because you need to know that you have it fed in all the way on the back. And if you have a soft fabric, that's quite hard to work out. But that said, there's some clever people out there that have managed to do it with knits, and certainly you could stabilize your bottom of your knit and do it that way. So that is the downturn fella. So you're going to be stitching so that your straight stitches are on the right side, okay? And it's turned under the back. But it's not going to turn it over double. It's just going to be a straight fold, you know, a straight hem with a raw edge, which is fine because you can stitch over it. So that is the downturn fellas. And then you get the plain hemmers. The plain hemmers are a little bit different. They bring the hem to the right side. And sometimes I don't like the idea of having the underside visible. So if I'm using the plain hemmers, then you're sewing on the wrong side. I tend to use a chain stitch with a decorative thread in the front, and I think it's really pretty, the effect I get on that. But they come down, and as I said, I can't go through them all because there's just so much information on them, and each one deserves its own thing. And it basically folds up inside, and you actually get a folded edge and a folded edge. So you get a hidden, you don't get a raw edge on this one. Okay, this one is the plain hammer. Okay, it's very easy to get confused with those 2 feet and what they do. But I have covered that briefly. So the double fold bias binders, sorry, I'm just reaching for them. They come as a double fold bias binder and a single fold bias binder, and they allow you to put binding down on the edge of something. Now, they're a bit similar to the knit woven binder. Now, just hold that thought. So the double fold bias binders are actually available for more machines than the knit woven binder. But what you do is you can put a binding on something that's fairly straight, or you can get a curve if it's a fairly stiff fabric. But I did this. This is this little apron, and I did the binding on the edge with that foot. And you can see I just used a chain stitch because I just used a chain stitch, so it looked like I'd sewn it on. But I could have used double or triple cover stitch if I wanted. So that is the double fold bias binder, which sounds ever so, and it also comes in a single fold version, but it sounds very similar to the knit woven binder, knit woven double fold bias binder. And we also have a knit woven single fold bias binder. So which is just collapsed off the chair in the background. Am I very confusing? So here this is, and this is a much bigger bit of equipment. It's much more expensive and it's not available for all the machines, although I've covered about the extension tables and things like that before. So this is, in my opinion, way superior because this you can put binding on a fold. Sorry, you could put binding on a curve. I didn't mean to say fold. I was thinking double fold. So you could put it on a curve. So my neckband I have on tonight, I put on with this, the double fold knit woven bias binder, okay? So it sounds similar, but it's a different piece of equipment. And it also works on knits. The other one's not so strongly recommended for knits, but if you have a very stable knit, it will work. But this is the easier one to use for knits and going round curves. Anyway, that is that. There is a pin tuck foot, there is a hem guide, there are numerous attachments for cover and chain, and that is my point. So I know I have run through that, and you're probably all saying, well, how do you use that one? Well, what does that do? How does it work? Well, I have some more on how you can find out more about that in a minute. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to show you some tips on cover and chain as well. Okay. Somebody said, I'm confused. Do all of these attachments come in the kit with the feet? Only if you buy the full kit. You know, it just depends on what your machine is. Look, you know, if you, whatever your machine is, it will have attachments. It may not have all the attachments that I have listed, but I'm pretty sure it'll have most of them. So I'm going to turn you over here and I'm just going to show you my best tips for cover and chain so that I have covered that. So as I said, this is my Euphoria bag, and this was all made using cover and chain, except for sewing it up inside because it made no sense not to do it with 3-thread overlock. Right, so I just want to say a couple of things. A lot of people, if they're having a problem with cover and chain, if they change to the needle that's recommended for their machine, in this case it's an EL by 705, and change to a size 90. Quite often that sorts the problem out. So always have size 90. It doesn't mean you always have to sew with them. Just have them there in case you have a problem, and changing to a size 90 helps you. Okay, that's a tip. I didn't write in my notes, but I'm giving it to you anyway because it's important. And here are some stitches that I have done, and these are using a heavy decorative thread. And this is just a double cover stitch, but this is how pretty and how big the bands can be. And this is just a regular chain stitch. Okay, so pretty effective. Add a real splash of color, and on the right side you can see I just got straight lines of stitching. Not very interesting, but the underside is really fun. So always think about a way to use the underside. Okay, when you very first start, when you've set up for cover and chain stitch, you have to sew into fabric, because if you don't sew into fabric, your stitch won't form. So I have already done that, but when I very first start, I sew into fabric, and I generally have my stitch length on 4, and that's because I nearly always try to create a thread chain. And the reason for that is when I start my next seam, I'm going to have a stitch that is locked on. Okay, it can't come undone. Now, it doesn't often come undone from the beginning anyway, so it's more important to have that thread tail as I come off, because that is where the stitches come undone, from this end. So how do we undo cover stitch? Is there an easy way to do it? Yes, there is. So for me, I've locked my stitches on, so I'm going to have to cut my thread chain off, which I'm doing. And then I will go to the right side and I will undo, I generally say 4 stitches. And of course I have 3 lots of 4 stitches to undo here. And when you undo cover and chain, you have to undo it from the end you come off. Okay, it's no good undoing it from the other end, because this system won't work. You have to do it where you came off, because it is a chain stitch. So I've undone my 4 straight stitches. I'm going to turn it over, and what you have to do is grasp the now before I pull this, I'm going to tell you it doesn't always work, and sometimes I have to cut 4 again. But you see how easily it's coming undone? It worked. I shouldn't have said it wouldn't work, but it doesn't sometimes. If that happens, then you just go and cut 4 more stitches, find that loose thread on the covered side, and pull on it. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was working in the round. Now, I actually have my open-toed foot on, and I really like this foot for this particular purpose. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this round, and then I'm going to come off, because some of you have trouble coming off. So obviously I need to turn it the other way, but when I'm going to do a hem, I need to find a place. Now, there is a hem guide, and if not, you can use tape to decide where you want your hem. So I can see that my hem's going to go about here, and that's fine. And I'm going to run it along this line because that's super easy. Okay, so I'm going to turn it right side out because, oh, sorry, I'm going to stay there because I want to sew it on the right side. And I'm going to sew inside the circle. So I'm going to start near the hem because it's not very thick and I'm not anticipating any problem. I am just going to pull my stitches off the stitch finger because I won't be able to get it in there because I've created a thread chain. So let me just lift my needles and pull it back. So I want to get rid of my locked stitches. Right, so I'm going to put it under, put it against the line I've got here, and I'm just going to stitch. Now when I come round, I want to sew over my initial stitches and then come off. So I'm stitching in the round. Now what I want to do is cut off all those extra stitches because they're just going to get sewn into my stitches and they'll look ugly. So I'm do it on the front. Right, so I'm keeping stitching and I'm coming up to my initial stitches. Okay, I've just changed my microphone. I hope you can hear me. I just had a problem with my microphone, so can somebody tell me whether they can hear me? I've changed my microphone to my other one. Is it working now? Yes, you can hear. Good. I just suddenly noticed I'd lost sound. Okay, so I'm coming up to my initial stitches, and this foot's great because it's got a gap in the middle, but if I didn't have this foot, these 3 notches on the left need to go over those stitches. Okay, and actually I can see them in the gap in the foot too. Okay, so I've sewn over my initial stitches, right? So what I need to do is I need to come off. So I'm going to raise my needles to the highest point. I'm going to raise my pressure foot because that opens my tensions. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my my key for putting my needles in and out up here, and I'm going to pull some slack on my needle threads. Then I'm going to hold them. I'm going to slide my Allen key underneath, pick up those threads, pick up the slack in those threads, and then I'm going to cut them. Gosh, these scissors used to be so sharp. Right, and now I'm just going to go whoosh backwards, and what that does is it pulls all my 3 threads to the back, or 4 threads, and that's going to allow me to tie them off and secure them. Okay, so here's the front where I went over it, and here's the back with the threads. Okay, so pretty cool, but remember, you always need that slack. So I know you all got lots of questions. I am just going to say that a lot of the, I'm going to come back to the front now. A lot of the things, there's so much to the different things I've shown you tonight, but I do have a downloadable book and videos, and it's only applicable to those of you with the Baby Lock 8-thread sergers. So if you have a Baby Lock with 8 threads, this is the book that tells you how to use all the attachments except for the knit woven binder, which I include in the knit class. So it's Serger Sanity 3 Part 3 Cover and Chain, and it comes with this book, downloadable book, and 20 videos. There's more than 20 videos because I add videos in. But I normally sell it at 40. I'm giving you a coupon code for 20% off, so that makes it 32. Is that right, Richard? Maths isn't my thing. So yes, 32, and it's on my website store at www.debcannonstudio.com, and you need the coupon code. And the coupon code is very simple. It's lowercase fl111, because this is my Facebook Live 111. So right, questions, Richard. I'm sure there's a million.
Right now because I'm typing.
He's typing. I've got no key. I've got all the key. My keyboard's so old it has no letters actually on it. Somebody else will put it up for you.
Coupon code. Trying to find the C. Where's the C gone?
You know, I really need to buy a new keyboard. I was a secretary, so I know where the keys are. Can you talk about tunneling when using the cover stitch on knits? Yes, reduce your your chain loop tension and make your stitch size a bit smaller. Both those things will help. Does the knit woven binder come in different sizes? It does. It does. I have here, this is the smallest binder. Isn't it cute? You see the little pink and grey stripe? That's the smallest binder. And off the top of my head, I can't remember the size. I think it is something like, I'm not sure. I know it's 1510 and then this small one. So yeah. So I know I've left you with quite a few things that probably need answering. As I said, there's so many. So many different binders and different ways to use them. Do you need to tie off the back of the threads when you cover and chain it around? I would. It's such a quick thing to do. You've got all the threads at the back, just knot them and cut them. You can tie them together. 8mm binder. Thank you, Marion. So yes. Is the coupon code only good for the book? Coupon code's only good for Serger Sanity 3 with videos. Okay, and as I said, that is specific to the Baby Locks. And it's not to say it wouldn't be of good information for other machines, but I always feel I need to say that it was completely written on the Baby Lock 8-thread machines. Okay, So you get the videos and the downloadable book. So do you have any questions for me to answer, Richard, or do you think I've... What is a safety stitch? A safety stitch is a chain stitch, one chain stitch. And the advantage of that is it gives you a nice seam. And then you finish it off with 3-thread overlock. Okay, so it's used a lot in manufacturing on wovens. It's not used so much on knits because there's no stretch in chain stitch. There is give in cover stitch, but not in a chain stitch.
Please remind the ladies that they're trying to get hold of the pretty heavy decorative thread.
Okay.
We just tell them we said it.
Yes. Okay. Does it apply to the 8-thread Triumph? Yes, absolutely. Baby lock 8-thread. Okay. Somebody's looking for the heavy decorative thread that I use. Don't forget, I sell that on my website. That was 8-weight thread that you saw. Somebody says you have to print the book or have the book printed if you want a hard copy. Okay, yep, you do. So, is the book good for the Triumph? Yes, yes. The book is good for all 8-thread machines because they all work the same, Baby Lock 8-thread machines. So that would be, you know, the Gloria, the Ovation, the Triumph, the Accolade, the Evolution, the Evolve, and then the Evolve has another name which I can't remember. So if you have 8 threads and it's a Baby Lock, it's good. So yes, Evolve also. Okay, well, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it another 2 weeks because I'm still frantically trying to catch myself up. And I will see you in 2 weeks. And I hope you all have a great 2 weeks. Post up anything fun you're working on. Love to see it. We had a great road class last week. And I will speak to you soon. See you in 2 weeks.